Everyone for joining us tonight. I know we're a little bit late, but that's not our fault. So we're going to blame everything else, probably technology and maybe the moon.
Absolutely.
I'm Jo Phillips. I'm JoOutLoud online, and tonight I'm talking with Paul O'Neill. Thanks for joining me, Paul.
Thanks for having me on board today, Jo.
I was really excited. Again, I sent out a tweet a little while ago, probably about 2 months ago now, it feels like. And I just said, who wants to be on JoOutLoud Live? And you jumped in like right away. So thank you for that. I love having guys on the show because they offer just kind of a different perspective for us, and sometimes very helpful perspective for us.
Fantastic. Glad to be here.
All right. So where are you right now, Paul?
I am in Edmonton. So I've actually been living up here for 7 years. I have Red Deer heritage in me ×3 and worked in the Red Deer media. So I'm in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada right now.
Right now.
Right now.
And I think your bio says you're like part American as well.
Yes, I am. I'm dual citizen. So I filed 2 sets of taxes. I vote in all kinds of elections. And my vote should matter this fall, just saying.
Good. Good. It's probably an interesting position to be in right now.
Really, it is. Really, it is. And as they say, vote like you've never voted before.
Yeah.
And I'm a voting.
Yeah. And like, is that something like you get a mail-in ballot? I assume you're part of that mail-in ballot
Yeah, I'm
drama.
technically considered a overseas voter, and it's for expats that live outside of the country. And we've always been able to vote by mail. It's a big hubbub right now in the lower 48 because the whole mailing thing is new to a lot of people, and everybody thinks there's going to be problems. But I've been doing it, and it's worked just fine. So, yeah, I will be voting by mail.
And not really any other way for you to vote, really.
Not
right?
so much with the border being the way it is. It's a little tough right now.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to hit the number generator. We'll decide what age we're talking about.
Okay.
All right. We talked about that last time. I'm changing the age. It hit 19.
Your show, your rules. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. We're going to talk about 31.
31.
Paul O'Neill at 31.
Okay. I can tell you what. You want to know where I was at 31?
Yeah, I want to know where you were at 31.
Okay, 31 years old. I was. Okay, I have to use the years, and since I'm in radio, I have to translate age to years. So 31 years ago, I was in Moncton, New Brunswick, working in radio. My daughter was just about a year old, and I was across the country. I'd never lived on the East Coast before, but I took my radio career job over there. I had been living there at that point 6 months into the year. I was this Western Albertan / Montanan who's never been to the East Coast of Canada before. Didn't understand that their snow is different. And yes, you don't go driving without snow tires because you will get stuck. Yeah, so 31 years age, was working a country station called XL96 in Moncton. And it was 2002. That's how old I was. So I can tell you what I was doing then, right there. If you got more questions, I got more answers.
I have more questions. So you had just moved to New Brunswick at that time?
Yeah, I had been there since November of 2000. I took the job over the phone, realistically.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was working in Calgary at a country station, Country 105, and was looking to move somewhere else to do better in my career. And this opportunity came up sight unseen, and I took the job over the phone, more or less, and made a big adventure out of it. And it was an adventure. I lived in Moncton until 2004, so till I was about 35, and 34 technically. And then I moved back to Red Deer again. So Red Deer's the thing. You always come back to Red Deer. No matter where you go, you come back.
Please don't say that. I like to believe that once you get out, you have the chance to stay out.
No.
No. So you're moving back. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it'll bring you back at least 2 more times.
It's like this hole that just sucks you back.
It does. It really does.
What shift were you? What shift did you take? Because you said it was an advancement in your career. Yeah. So where did you move from and where to?
Well, in Calgary at Country 105, I was doing the lowly overnight shift. I was also the station's mascot, the cash cow. And I was also, I dubbed commercials. I helped
Hey,
out.
I'm just gonna have to stop you right there. You can't slide past. I was the mascot, the cash cow.
Oh, that was terrible. Okay, first of all, I'm very claustrophobic. Also, the suit smells because it's hot in there. And it's the
Uh-huh.
stampede, and you're wearing this, and it's 100 degrees outside, and kids are coming up, and you're supposed to shake their hands. Drunk people are pushing you over. Good times, great oldies, not so fun. So I had to do the cash cow as part of my gig. So I had enough about that. I figured 2 stampedes was enough. I'm ready to get out. And this job in Moncton came up, and they're like, "You're going to be afternoon drive, and you're going to be a music director." And I said,
Oh,
"Well,
wow.
daytime radio, let's do it." And I went for that. So
Yeah.
that was the draw originally, was the opportunity. And the adventure part was I've never been to the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really young. I was 31 years old. Maybe that's not young to your demographics on right now here, but 31 at the time, looking back, I was pretty young.
Oh, it's young to all of us, trust me.
Okay.
I think we'll take a vote on that in the comment section. I can see Michael Johnson's here. He's the only one under 30. Probably the only one under 45, honestly, that's
Well,
watching
then
this.
you've got lots to live up to there, Michael Johnson.
He's wonderful, actually. If you so Michael Johnson has a podcast of his own called Tea with Mike, and an
Yeah.
interview series. He's just awesome. He was on Tea with the Gary V and did this whole big thing. I'm giving you a shout out, Michael. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. We're not talking about that. We're talking about you. So your daughter was 1.
Yep.
And Nikki Monolas is jumping in. She says she's under 45.
Hey, Nikki.
She's just making sure that we know
I
that.
know.
Thanks, Nikki. I think she's even under 40. Um, so so your daughter, Kaylee
Taylor. Yep.
Taylor.
Yep.
So Taylor was 1. She went with you.
No, actually, because my life is a complete drama, and you're going to love this. So by that time, Taylor's mother moved back to Alberta. And so my
Okay.
daughter was living in St. Albert. I was across the country in Moncton. I would come back as much as I could, generally 2 to 3 times a year to visit. And after that happened, I needed to kind of make a plan to get back to where she lived. And it took me 3 more years to get out to find the opportunity to get me back to Alberta. And that was Big
Mhm.
105 Red Deer in 2004. But, that was still in the future at that point. But so my daughter was living across the country, but we did the best we could.
Mhm.
Talked on the phone every day. And, the technology wasn't what it is now. There was no FaceTime. There wasn't all of this stuff that we have now. So it was
Mhm.
difficult, but we made it work. And, she was young at that time and doesn't quite remember me being that far away. But I can tell you this, it was a challenge, but it was also worth it.
Mhm. Yeah, a little of both, right?
Absolutely.
The thing I found with kids is that they don't necessarily remember all the things they do with you, but they remember how they felt with you.
Absolutely.
So as long as you focus on that, then you're golden, right?
Yeah. So yeah, that was happening. I wasn't married. I was just kind of dating local people. and but
There was a laugh there.
there was a laugh. Well, there's fun stories, but yeah.
All right.
Yeah, but that's where I was. But I really liked where I lived, and I made the most out of it. I knew I wasn't going to be there forever, so I tried to see as much as I could. I saw most of Nova Scotia, all of New Brunswick, PEI, the state of Maine, New Hampshire, Quebec. So I made sure I did as much as I could because I knew I wasn't going to be out there for ever, and I knew that it would be a time tick down before I'd be getting the hell out of Dodge.
So as far as a different culture, how different was it, like culturally, to go from Alberta to New Brunswick?
Well, first of all, especially in central Alberta, there's not a lot of local people in central Alberta that have been there all their lives. Most of them have moved from away.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about you, Joe, but I know a lot of people have come from all over the place and they've come to central Alberta.
Yeah.
It was different going to Moncton because everybody there has been there for generations. And it was strange because people would assume, because my last name is O'Neill and there was O'Neills in Miramichi, they assumed I was related to them. And I said, no, I've got no relations here. And they're like, what do you mean? How do you not have family here? Like, that's just how it is. You live 2 doors down from your grandma and 5 doors down from your uncle. And you've all lived on Dominion Street since 1876. And so that was weird for me because I'm not used to that. And it was weird for them because they didn't know that that could exist.
Mm-hmm.
Also, people don't move from Western Canada to the East Coast for jobs. It's the other way around.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point. I think that's one of my favorite things about going east is like everything here is quite new and everything there is old.
Yeah.
So you can actually like it's possible that your family lived on Dominion Street since 1876, right?
Yep. And
Not
people had,
possible here.
oh, sorry, go ahead. No,
That's not possible here. Yeah.
no, not so much because I mean Dominion Street didn't exist till 1916 in
Yeah.
Delburn. So, but it was different because a lot of people had family plots in their backyard, and that's been the same family plot, a burial ground in their backyard that's been in that generation for years, and that was also interesting. But like you say, everything is so old there, and there's so much history there. What we consider old out this way is considered, well, that's pretty new. When you
Yeah.
find buildings that have been there since, the odd one from the 1700s, but most common, 1880s to 1890s is still standing and being used in everyday life.
So cool.
It was really cool. I enjoyed it.
Do hurricanes a thing in New Brunswick, or is that still, do we have to go further
You
to do that?
get them, and the one that affected me when I lived there was Hurricane Juan of 2003, I think it was. Maybe it was '02, but it was late September, and they hit, depending on how it goes, they kind of weaken as they go inland. But that one hit Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, PEI pretty hard, and that was harder than normal. And people there don't take hurricanes with a grain of salt like they do in South Carolina, Florida, the Gulf states. It's part of life there. So hurricanes there are kind of a one every 10-year thing, and it's a big event, and people aren't really ready for it. The power was out for weeks, and it took a long time for life to get back to normal.
How do you do radio when the power is out?
Well, here's the thing: you live at the radio station. This during blizzards too. If you were covering the morning show or doing afternoon drive, they actually had cots at work, and you'd live at work. And we had a generator generator to off the radio station, a generator to off the transmitter, because we were the lifeline during power outages for the hurricanes, the blizzards, and other big disasters. So there it was different. Like in Red Deer, if the station went off the air, it went off the air. And there it was like, well, it can be off the air for a max of 20 minutes. We got to have this sucker turned on. And this is the lifeline for people. And you kind of drop music, and you just became more or less passing out information. That was something that was really cool. I also got to experience 9/11 when a bunch of the planes landed in Moncton. Not as many as Gander or St. John's or Halifax, but we had about 10. And the same deal, our radio stations became sounding boards for, we're looking for people that speak German that can accommodate a German family. And it was really cool.
Yeah, that's cool. And so different from now, like where social media is the go-to for all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like even the chances of you moving from an overnight shift because everything's been changed with radio in the last year. Like it's sad and frustrating and disappointing, but also really cool that that's a part of your history.
I enjoyed it.
All right, so you're 31, you're in New Brunswick. You had moved for a job. Your daughter's here. What did you hope to do next?
Well, it's funny. This whole job in New Brunswick was supposed to be part of my gateway drug, as I called it, to American radio because I'm a dual citizen. So I had hoped originally when I moved to Moncton that I would have been able to make a move down to Boston or somewhere along the seaboard, a bigger market. My daughter was a planned experience, and that changed that experience. So after the plan for me was to get within a day's drive of where my daughter lived in the Edmonton area. So for me, a day's drive was Regina, Moose Jaw, Cranbrook.
Oh.
I know, aim for the hot spots, but it was all within a day's drive, and that was my realistic plan. And because I didn't think I had enough experience to get into the big major markets like Edmonton and Calgary. And at the time, it was very difficult without the experience level to get into a regular on-air day part like a morning show or a drive show. But my experience in Moncton did allow me to have that. Unfortunately, I didn't get the jobs at Edmonton or Calgary. I got the job in Red Deer, which was also good because it's 90 miles away. And I've done time in Red Deer previously and knew people knew me, I knew them. So it was a good fit. But that was what I was hoping to do career-wise at that point, was to go down to the US and use my citizenship and get into a big market. And then that changed through the family reasons. And my goal was to get back to the West and, be in my daughter's life.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can say I know, I do know people who have chosen the career over the kids. So that's, yeah, that's I was gonna say it's cool, but it's not. It's what should be done. So yeah, awesome. I can't imagine that it was probably really easy to get a morning show in Calgary, Edmonton, given the longevity of the hosts on some of the major stations there. Like they were like gonna die there.
Well, they were institutions,
Yeah.
I mean, if you think of the Bear in Edmonton at the time, it was the Paul Brown Show. They were an institution at the time. Power 92, Joe FM. I figured Joe FM because, we're on JoOutLoud here. And also an institution. So it was very difficult to get into those kind of positions. And honestly, at the time, there was just the job that I left in Calgary, which was, well, we need a mascot. We need somebody to do weekends. And, I'd paid my dues in that. And I didn't want to come back that way. I wanted to come back in the right way, career-wise. So it took a long time.
So this is a difficult question for me to phrase all the time, but I hope you understand what I'm asking. When you imagined yourself at 31, when you pictured yourself in your mind, what was your picture of yourself? How did you imagine who you were to everyone else?
At the time, 31, because everything had changed for me. My career had changed. My goals had changed. I felt a little bit lost because the original plan was career only and not family, because that angle didn't exist. And I moved to Moncton by myself. I didn't have a steady partner or anything. So at the time, my goal was all career. And then a few months after I turned 31, or just before technically, that's when everything changed. And I was still trying to adjust to what I was going to do next, how I was going to get there. So most of age 31 was me trying to figure out how I'm going to find my way to the Alberta area again, or somewhere within a 7-hour drive, and make it work, but also balance career longevity and moving forward. Because the easy thing would have been to do is to give up my broadcasting career, which I'd done 10 years at that point, and come and do something different. And I didn't feel that was the thing to do. I wanted to make sure I could use my career to get me where I needed to go. And it got me there. It just took a little longer.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I answered your question fully.
No, good answer. I'm not gonna judge you on that at all. So 31, did you love who you were? Did you love yourself at 31?
I did, not at the beginning. My birthday's in March. Remember March 18th when I turned 31? I was thinking I'm a disaster. I'm thinking, I'm not doing the right things. I'm not living the way that my parents would have wanted me to live. I wasn't doing enough. And it also bothered me that I was 31 and I didn't have my proverbial shit together. And, and that really was heavy on me. And it took me a good part of that year to figure out, okay, it's okay to be where you're at. It's okay to kind of have a bit of a junction here in what you're going to do. And this probably won't be the last time I do it. But for me at that age, that was my first real big challenge and my first real big hurdle I had to kind of figure out in my life. And because that whole year prior to 31, 30 was a very tough year, but 31 was like, okay, this has all happened. What do we do now? And it took me a little while for me to even look at things and have doors open. Like I had to open them myself, but they were in front of me, but I didn't know that they were there. So it took me a long time to kind of figure out that I liked where I was or who I was. And by the time I turned 32, I was very happy with who I was and kind of found living across the country, far away from any family, kind of helped make me where the person I am now. I think I still have those values that I kind of picked up living there and kind of independently figured out what I need to do.
Yeah. How cool is that? Like rather than sitting and dwelling, all of these different experiences kind of like moved you forward. It's really cool to start in one place in just a year and get to a completely different place.
And it's funny because I haven't thought about it until this conversation now, but looking back from the beginning of 31 to the end of 31, there was so much progress in learning about myself and trusting myself and being okay with the way things were.
And letting go of other people's expectations.
Absolutely. And that was hard for me to do.
I think that's a big part of what our 30s does for us, honestly. I mean, I don't know anyone who didn't have a shit show at some point in their 30s that just kind of redirected them and that they really tried to learn from. So yours just happened a little bit earlier than everyone else's.
Well, it's funny because I think my parents would have liked me to figure out my shit in my 20s, but no, I didn't. 30s. And by the time I hit 40, I was like, I know where I'm going with everything.
Yeah.
And, but 31 was the beginning of that journey of kind of starting to figure shit out.
That seems so long ago. What was your biggest dream? You said you wanted to be in radio in the US. So what was your biggest dream at 31? Like this would be massive, it's impossible, but this would be awesome. Versus today's Paul's biggest dream.
Well, it's funny because at that time, my goal was to work in Boston. I even had a station I liked, 92.5 The River in Boston. It was this really cool AAA station. And at the time, AAA music was, your Counting Crows and stuff like that. And they mixed it in with, Vanessa Carlton and stuff like that. It was kind of a neat mix. And so I thought that would be a cool place to work. And I wanted to be a music director there. I wanted to work in the format. And I wanted to be part of the whole community. Now it's funny. I'm actually, I kind of love being more alone and more secluded. And me and my other half, we like to get away and go on trips where there's not a lot of people and go off the beaten path. When I was 31, I was all about, I want to be where all the action is. I want to be at Faneuil Hall in Boston. I want to be downtown. I want to be there. Now, if I was to go there, I'd be like, well, when can we go to Nantucket and get the hell away from all these people? Because that's how it would be right now, and I kind of abhor cities now. And before, it's all I wanted to do was be in the thick and thin of it. And I don't know if that's an age thing or an experience thing or just a Paul thing. I have no idea.
We'll find out in another 10 years, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you betcha.
Who was the person that you would credit with being your mentor or who influenced you back then?
His name was Mike Shannon. He was the guy, he was the program director in Moncton. And he called me, it was my middle of the night at like 10 in the morning. And I was groggy from doing the overnight show. This was back in Calgary. is before it all happened. I get this phone call and I see a 506 area code, and I'm thinking, who's calling me from Maine? I had my states mixed up.
That's a great accent you have in your head.
Yeah. So I picked up the phone, and he was calling to say that he had this position and he had heard about me, and I was like, what? And I think I hung up the phone on him and then called him back like 5 minutes later. I'm like, oh my God, I get with it all. And anyhow, he actually was my boss in Moncton, and he helped me get other positions. He helped me get a really great position in Regina years later. And he's still a mentor now for me. He's still in the industry. He worked in Calgary. He worked in Edmonton. He's kind of done it all. And he's a good person, and he's a good life experience mentor, and also kind of went through what I went through, because when he was younger, he had a child, and him and the child didn't have the same connection because the mother and he didn't have a good connection, and they were able to work that out. But he helped me get through that part of what I was going through at age 31 too, of, how do I make this work professionally? How do I make this work for my life? How do I make this work for being around my daughter? And he helped me kind of map that out. And, I've leaned on him 2 other times for other positions. And, he's still the one I would use as a reference right now if I was to make any kind of career change. He's been kind of in my life since 2000.
So 20 years later, still there.
You betcha. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's impact. All right. I think that one piece of growth for all of us is in looking back at where things went wrong sometimes, or where we had conflict or challenge. And rather than talking about the challenge, talking about how we were the bad guy, what we did to contribute to the situation being how it was. And I think this is important because it helps us all learn how to handle that in a better way. So can you think of a situation where you were the bad guy that you would probably handle it differently now?
Yeah. Which one? We all got these, right?
Yes, we do.
I think for me, I'm just trying to think of one that I can bring to the conversation. Give me a second here. Yeah, I will tell you, there was times like when I became my first radio station program director in a small market. After Red Deer version 2, I went to Wainwright Lloydminster and programmed radio stations there. And I took that job. Mike Shannon got me that job. And, it was an opportunity to lead people. And I took the job, even though it was in a smaller market. I took it because it was an opportunity to grow in my career and get into management. Well, let me tell you, my first years of management was full of mistakes and, thinking with emotion, not thinking with logic, which I learned to do later. And, I remember getting upset with some of my staff because they weren't in radio as long as me, and it upset me that they didn't know things. Here's the story. Our station played CCR, Creedence Clearwater Revival. And my midday host didn't know that CCR was Creedence Clearwater Revival. And so she came out of this, and on the piece of paper that indicates the songs, only was enough type, space for CCR. And so I was doing the show with her one day, and I said, yeah, that's Creedence Clearwater Revival, 93.7 Wayne FM. And so we shut off the mics, and she's mad. And I go, what's up? And she's like, you didn't tell me that CCR and Creedence Clearwater Revival are the same thing. And I said, well, that's kind of like the Stones and the Rolling Stones. And she didn't know that either. So I got mad at her because she was a millennial and she didn't know that. And I handled that poorly, and I forgot that when I started in radio in 1991 at age 19, I totally butchered all the music. I didn't know who Burton Cummings was. I didn't know that he was from the Guess Who. I didn't know the Guess Who was not the Who. I was very, I didn't know all this. But, I realized afterwards, I'm like, that was a huge mistake, you know. I made her feel absolutely like zero for not knowing. And that's not fair. This is her first job at a broadcast school. I mean, you hired the kid away from UBC, and her first job is Wainwright, and her boss is giving her hell because she doesn't know what CCR is. Also, she can't find a good bowl of sushi anywhere. So,
I think that's a really good lesson for all of us, even now. I think honestly, as a 45-year-old, it's so easy for me to even now forget. Like how can you not know? Like it's so important to try and remember what it was like when we were
I
that
know.
young.
It's so easy to
Yeah.
forget. And, we just get so used to what we know and what we do. And we forget that, new people to the industry we're in don't know it. And,
Yeah.
I go through that now at work at my present job, where a lot of our staff is very in tune with social media, and they have had previous jobs and experience in the digital background platforms. And here's me, asking why I can't get my Instagram video to carry over, the caption from the first frame into the second. And I'm like, I don't get it. And they're like, oh. So,
or when they bring up like it seems like every singer on like the top 40 stations now is a singer that made it big on TikTok.
yeah.
And I don't know any of their names. And yet, like, I feel like at our age that we get to knock it down to kids these days.
Yes.
But we don't do the same. We don't give the same respect down,
No.
I guess, in that direction.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or it's easy for them to say, okay, boomer. I'm like, nah, boomer, I'm an Xer.
Exactly.
Nice.
I know. Exactly. Gen X, please, and thank you.
Yep, exactly.
Your fight is with the people older than me.
Yep. Blame my parents. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What lessons did you carry forward from that time?
At age 31, or in that time of making that mistake and making my staff feel like hell?
Age 31.
Okay. Well, all of
Or
this,
both. Or both.
all of this became kind of life lessons of how I was going to get through my life. I also learned at age 31 that you have to learn from people that are ahead of you in their career. And just because they may not be as cool as you'd like them to be, or they're not doing what you think they should be doing, doesn't mean they can't pass on valuable lessons that will apply to you. And I learned that around that time. I started to really understand that, like my mentor, Mike Shannon, he was a guy I could trust. And I could see maybe his experiences weren't even how he wanted his experiences to be, but I could see how I could learn from him. And my favorite line that he says is, I've seen this movie before, I know how it ends. And I've used that so many times because, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and getting the same results. And a lot of us do that and we don't realize we're doing that. Maybe we're trying to go down a career path a certain way, and you're using these same methods and you're getting nowhere. And you end up back where you were. And about that time, I think I realized that I got to stop doing that, because up until that time, I was doing that. I was doing a lot of the same methods and not getting ahead anywhere. And come to think of it, I probably wouldn't have made it to Boston had I not met Mike Shannon. I don't know where I would have been. I don't think I would have went to Moncton. I don't know. I might have given up life and went to Shaunavon, Saskatchewan. I'm not sure. But
or the traditional radio guy gets out of radio and goes to a car dealership move.
Well, I did sell cars after my radio gigs. You have to. I had that job for a month and a half, and I sold one car. Therefore,
I had no idea.
Yep, I did that after getting out of radio in Regina briefly, before tour of duty number 3 to Red Deer. I was a terrible car salesman.
Can you explain that to me? Why do car dealerships want radio people?
Mainly because they like our charisma. Also, a lot of us have done live on location remotes at their dealerships, and they also see how people interact with us. And, some of them do really well. I know there's a lot of ex-radio alumni that do really well in car sales.
Yep,
Um,
absolutely.
and stick it out and go places. I can't sell anything. You know, I can't, I'm too honest. And I was bad. I was selling Fords, and they're like, "Oh, what do you think of this?" I'm like, "I don't know. Do you like the color?"
And
And
you don't have to go past I was selling Fords. Like you're good.
so I did that for a month and a half. So I did the required car sales gig, and it wasn't for me, but some people have done excellent at it, and good on them. Good on them.
Yeah, I know some really successful people who moved from radio to, and they definitely get paid a lot more.
They do.
Yeah, yeah.
Hands down, kids, it doesn't
Because
pay well.
a lifetime in radio is a rare thing. Like to have started when you're 19 and still be at it. Like that's not a common thing anymore. It's
Not
kind of
really.
cool.
Of my broadcast school from Lethbridge College in the broadcast production, there's only 2 of us out of 13 that are still working
Wow.
in the industry. One's in the sales side. I'm on the programming side. So there's only 2 of us, and everybody else got smart and got real jobs.
All right. So you and I are Facebook friends, so I'm familiar with your travels. And so was it this year you got stuck in the States? Was that like...
Yeah, I was actually down in Virginia last month, early September, to go to a family function for my uncle that passed away, and his wishes were to have his ashes out on the ocean. And so I weighed heavily whether or not I should even go on this, because first of all, you come back, you have to be self-quarantined, and there's also the fear of going across the border, and what if I get COVID, or there's all these little things that made it difficult to even want to go. But I talked it over with my family there, and they thought this would be ideal if you could come. It's a very small gathering. There'll be 3 of us. And so I went, and it was a real surreal thing because I'm used to going across that border, usually by land. But it was totally weird because you can't fly international out of Canada except for a few major spots. Calgary is the only airport in Alberta that goes international. The Edmonton airport is simply domestic. Getting on the plane to go to originally the flight went to Dallas Fort Worth, and it went to Norfolk, Virginia, where I was going. There was 2 planes that day leaving the airport from the U.S. side of the internationals terminal in Calgary, and it was bizarre. Everything was closed. There was 2 planes, and that was it. And when you got down there, things are kind of normal. You're in the domestic world and still fairly busy with planes. But coming back, I had myself a little bit of an unplanned layover because my flight from Norfolk, Virginia to Dallas, Fort Worth was late getting to the gate. It's a big airport. DFW Airport is one of the largest in North America. I think it's 3rd behind Atlanta, which is the biggest. You have to change terminals, and they don't hold planes for you. So I had to get to the other terminal. I had to go from Terminal D to Terminal B, and you have to take a little people mover to get there, and it takes a good 15 minutes. I ran like hell to my gate, and it was gone. It was closed. The plane was backing out. And it was gone. And I kind of realized, okay, I think that's the last plane of the day. Oh, no, the only plane of the day to Calgary. The only. So I found this agent from American Airlines who was trying to log off and go for dinner. And, a whole lineup of people had missed other flights. And long story short, they couldn't put me on another plane to Canada. They couldn't even get me to Toronto or Vancouver without me paying out of pocket and taking another airline and then trying to figure out the rigmarole of getting to Calgary. So I elected, okay, I'm going to have a 24-hour layover in Dallas. Great. Are y'all going to pay for a hotel and a meal voucher for me? Oh, no. Okay. Not your problem. Okay. Always have travel insurance. Never usually buy it. This time I did.
Oh,
And
good.
I've got a claim into my through to Allianz, which is through my credit card. and I'm waiting to get like a couple $100 back. So I decided I'm gonna have fun. I'm missing a day of work, and I'm gonna hang out in Fort Worth. It was 80 degrees, so I went and took the commuter rail downtown to Fort Worth and walked around, and it was great. Getting back into Calgary that night, you go through intense screening before. Put it this way: with the COVID pandemic, you go through more screening now by Alberta Health Services than you do by customs.
Mm.
Customs, usual. Do you have to declare? Do you have this value? Nope. So you think you're done, and you go around this corner, and there's this big station. You download an app. You have to input your flight number, where you've been. It's kind of like a virtual ankle bracelet, if you will, and you're to self quarantine at home. And they are very thorough, and they ask you all kinds of things. And I get why they do, but I thought that was more intense than going through customs. And so I was locked down at home for 14 days. And after about 6, you get a little squirrely because you can't leave your property. I mean, I own a little townhouse, so I have a little bit of frontage and backyardage, but I couldn't go to the mailbox. I
Oh,
couldn't.
wow.
Yeah, so you had to really plan ahead and get people to drop off things. And I get why they do it, but it was different. And I mean, luckily my quarantine ended last week, and I'm good. I was fine. I didn't think there would be anything wrong, but I get why you have to. But that was my experience with that. So always have travel insurance. Uh, Pack a little bag of clothing, because I didn't have that, because my suitcase was lost on the airplanes and somewhere in the airport. So I went to Target and went and got all these stuff, and I'm in the bathroom putting on deodorant and doing my hair, and I look like a vagrant, and yeah. So I made it.
You made it. You're home. So, you a couple years ago took a train trip. Was it across Canada that you went?
I've done a few train trips.
Okay.
The ones that I can say that are the longest, in 2014, I took the Via Rail train, which is Canada's passenger train service. I went from Edmonton to Toronto and back. Literally, I went to Toronto, and as long as it took for the train to be turned around and reserviced, that's how long I was in Toronto. I was in Toronto for 4 hours and went back. It was a 3-day ride there, 3-day ride back. Really good food. People on the train become like community. That was one of my trips, but I think my favorite trip I did was to Churchill, Manitoba last year. And my dad and I went. My dad's a pretty good travel companion. So we drove out to Dauphin, Manitoba, and that's the closest place we could catch the train to Churchill. And there again, it's surreal, because once you get north of Thompson, there's no highways, there's no roads. That train is the post office, the grocery store, the doctor. It's the school bus, and it has a different life. And it stops every 7 or 8 miles. That each community has its own train access, and it's different. It's like you're in a different country, and it was really cool. So that was one of my favorite trips that I did, was to Churchill.
And do you sleep on the train when you take a train
Oh
trip?
yes, yeah. I always assume everybody knows. Yeah, you can either go the poor way, which is coach, and coach is fine, but on a long trip, you want to get a room. So the rooms are divided into different classes. You can get a cabin for one, a double roomette, or a drawing room, which is a big room. And I always recommend the drawing room, because it's got all these couches and stuff. It's got you got your own bathroom, your own sink. You never have to leave if you don't want to. But passenger train travel is very communal, and people visit with everybody. And there's all these common areas like the dining car, the lounge car, and there's wine tastings and stuff like that. So it's kind of like a cruise on wheels, if you will. So it's a good way to go. This March, my other half and I, we went to Charleston, South Carolina. We flew on the direct Swoop Airlines from Edmonton to Orlando, and took Amtrak up to Charleston and did a sleeper on that. So we like to try different ways of travel, and she's new to train travel, so I'm trying to get her into it. She seems to like it. It's the way to go. It really is. And none of the hassle of airplanes and airports and security and all that.
It's not an easy way to go in Alberta.
No, it's not. And it doesn't help that Via Rail only operates at the best of times twice a week, east and west. So you got to really plan your days. Also, Via Rail's at the mercy of CN, its host railroad. And freight trains are business, passenger trains are. So you spend a lot of time. Let's see, the longest I've ever sat anywhere, and Nikki Monolaws might know this, I sat in Ituna, Saskatchewan for 9 hours because of
Wow.
congestion. Yeah.
I've taken when my kids are 15, I have 3 kids, and when each of them turns 15, we take a trip east, and it's called their 15-year-old trip. So we fly into Montreal, and then it's a plane, train, and automobile trip. And so we've taken the train. My son and I took the train from Montreal to Ottawa, and my daughter and I took the train from Montreal to Quebec City. And then I took it once as well from Vancouver down to Seattle, which was absolutely beautiful.
Oh, yeah, the Amtrak, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful. And just really quick trips, like 3 hours, 4 hours. But I can definitely see the appeal of wanting to jump on and like really commit to it and take like a real train trip. It's just fascinating to me. It's what, like, I'm always fascinated when you're talking about it.
And long distance train travel is different because you forget what day it is, what time it is. That part of the trip is part of the journey and part of the vacation itself. And you meet people from all over the world that are doing the same thing. It's an experience. It's not necessarily meant to get you there in a hurry. It's meant to be enjoyed. And that's the greatest thing. Like that trip to Toronto, a lot of people said, "Oh my God, 3.5 days getting to Toronto, only to spend 3.5 days to come back." I'm like, it was great because you see everything. You're talking to people from around the world. The food is great because dining car food on a long distance train is a cut above the snack bar on a short distance train. And I drank the train out of scotch one night. I had to fill up and Sioux Lookout. But it's a way to travel, and it's an experience, and you never forget it. And you meet people from all over the world that love to do this. So
I love what you said. Well, I love what you said about it being, you're not in a hurry. If you're doing it, you're not in a hurry.
no,
So
you're
it's
not.
not about getting there. It's about the process and about enjoying every minute of the travel piece of it.
Yep, it's part of the journey as the destination. Is the whole allure of long distance train travel, and we have it in this country. I find Amtrak in the U.S. a lot more accessible because it operates more, just because there's more people.
Yep.
It's a lot more dependable than Via Rail in Western Canada. But I mean, if you have a chance to do a long distance train, it doesn't matter where you pick it up from. The Via train in Edmonton or Amtrak in Shelby, Montana, and you go east or west. I mean, it's a really cool experience and has a life of its own.
Yeah. All right. Well, Paul, we have about 10 minutes left. And so is there anything that you wanted to talk about tonight that we haven't actually talked about?
Oh, geez. I guess I'm an open book. I was going to ask if anybody that's watching the video has any questions for me.
So if you are watching, does anyone have anything that they want to ask Paul? Just throw it in the comment section.
You betcha.
It's so rare because I'm in social media. It's really rare that I say, "Hey, just say it in the comment section." I avoid the comment section like it as much as possible.
Well, I know in radio, our comment section is full of all kinds of things. You never read the comments, or you're there for the comments.
Or you're there for the comments, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was joking the other day that we should develop a product that we sell to radio, like specifically to the people who have to actually manage your comment sections, and be like, you know what, we'll do it for you. Especially when there are those stories, the ones that are gonna just guarantee to have grossness in it.
Well, and also I found that since COVID has begun, people's comments are very unfiltered now.
Absolutely.
Yep. And at our radio station, most of the comments, you can't take them seriously because you'll be reduced to nothing if you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you just can't jump in. You just can't engage in it. because that's not why they're doing it. Like they're not doing it to get an answer from you. They're doing it to, you know, for lots of reasons. Sometimes it's how they deal with fear. Sometimes it's that they're just bored. Sometimes it's something they want to say to somebody else, but they can't. So they're going to say it to you. Sometimes they're just jerks, you know, like there's,
Absolutely.
yeah. So yeah. All right. So our comment section's just hanging out there.
Yeah,
So
just hanging out. So we're quiet. Well, I guess while everybody's thinking of anything to ask, no, I'll just say that 2020 has been a challenging year, but also been one of the best years because it's what you make of it. And originally, there was a lot of fear. I had a lot of fear of this whole COVID thing. And I was the guy that would wash my groceries when I got them picked up or, picked up from the co-op. They drop them off at my house and like clean them and spray them down. And, was afraid to have anybody over. And then about June, I think I realized, okay, it's time to live life. And about the time that the masks came out and everybody wanted to wear a mask, I decided, okay, if this is the trade-off, if I have to wear a mask, but I'm still allowed to do as much normal things as possible, fair trade-off for me. And
yeah.
that has really helped. And me and my other half, we've gone on trips this summer. We were limited to where we go. Normally we like, back into the US. This time our trips were, and I'll tell you where we went: Cold Lake, Regina, Moose Jaw, Waterton, Pincher Creek. And we enjoyed all those trips because we found things that, you're forced to look at because you're not looking further away. You find cool things in your backyard. And I love driving the back roads anyhow. And I've always wanted to go to Elrose, Saskatchewan. Got there, went to Snipe Lake, got there, went on the ferry to Riverhurst, Saskatchewan. So I put some ferry miles on me. And so it was cool, and most people don't think of that. They think of where can we go? And usually it's Vegas or it's California,
Yeah.
or, the usual suspects, or Banff. And we decided, let's just enjoy what's in our backyard. A lot of people make fun of Cold Lake because of the oil industry, but there's a lot of cool stuff up there. The lake is beautiful. They actually have Alberta's largest marina, and it's a beautiful marina. And it's got a nice little lake walk. Like Sylvan Lake's lakefront, Lakeshore Drive is nice, but Cold Lakes is 10 times.
Really?
So, little pro tip: go to Cold Lake, and you'll find plenty of gems, good restaurants, nice scenery, friendly people. We enjoyed it. That was one of our trips.
I think that's kind of what we did this summer as well. Just jump in the car and like we had a rule. Let's go and stop at every town we pass. We have to stop because there's got to be something to see. and
Oh,
and then you really find out the history and you find all of these cool little pockets of things. And yeah, Tracy says COVID reunited our passion and love for Alberta and Canadian places to see. Um, yeah, and I think one thing that I looked at, I was very similar to you. I was washing my groceries, all of that stuff during lockdown, because I have a partner who's got a chronic illness, and at the time he was going to the ER quite often, and it was a really challenging time for us. But then I started to look at it, and this is a weird comparison, but I looked at it like the HIV pandemic
same.
in the 80s. And it was, okay, well, let's look at it in terms of risk. Let's assess risk in each situation and then apply protection according to the risk, right? If it's high risk, we're not doing it. If it's low risk and we wear a mask or wear a condom, then let's go do it. Why we don't have to not do stuff. We just have to be smart about it and proceed in a way that keeps everybody safe. But more importantly, like for me as a business owner, not to make this a mask discussion, but when you wear a mask, it's more likely my business will stay open.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I appreciate that. So just, yeah, we drove out to Vancouver to see my son. And the thing that I noticed most, and I don't know if you would notice this because Edmonton is very different right now from central Alberta. We noticed that it's just taken a lot more seriously, that there's a lot more precaution everywhere else than
There
central
is.
Alberta. Yeah.
We were just in
Edmonton's.
Stettler today, and we noticed
Mhm.
that, you know, we wore masks by default going into stores, and the locals were like, no, no, you don't have to do that. You can take that off. And that was kind of surreal for us because we're just used to that now.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in Edmonton a couple weeks ago, and it was surreal for me because here, like the patios are open and the stores are open, and like it's just really like business as usual. Yes, people wear masks, but it's certainly not mandated. And when we were in Edmonton, um, just a really, really firm reality of what it's like to be in a community where there are, I mean, here there's like two cases once in a while, sort of thing. So it's really interesting how our experiences are, how different it's been for all of us. But also, like I agree with you, 2020, while it's been a massive um, so much has been thrown at us every single day. If you haven't grown through this, then like there's been so many lessons for us to learn.
Oh,
So
absolutely. And
um,
that's the thing, since about June is when I think a lot of us realized, okay, let's not live in fear. Let's try to get through the year, and let's just try to do as much normal things as we can, and
mhm.
be safe when we need to be. And I think we're all going to be okay if that's a society that we can do that.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, that's same page.
Exactly.
All right. Well, Paul, I really appreciate you jumping in on this. Actually, Joe Out Loud Live actually started with Nikki Monologues during COVID because we couldn't hang out, and I was like, why don't we just go online? Let's go on the Joe Out Loud page and let's chat for an hour, and we'll talk about what this is like. And so she's actually the one that helped me start this. So this is like a really cool thing that came out of that time as well. So
Well, and you know what? This is the way it is. You got to find new ways to engage with people, and this is an excellent way.
I'm looking forward to the day when it can be live, like actually in person, over beers or something like that, which will probably be next year, but this works too. So,
Absolutely.
all right. Well, I appreciate you joining us next week. So this is really interesting to me. Next Monday is Thanksgiving, and Sarah Wild and Small is joining me. She's with the Urban Aboriginal Voices Society, and so it's going to be an interesting take on Thanksgiving, a really important conversation. And I'm looking forward to having her. So Sarah Wild and Small will be on next week. I hope that everyone who's watching joins us. And thank you again, Paul, for hanging out with me. And
My
we'll talk to
pleasure.
you soon.
You
All
betcha.
right.
And thanks for watching, everybody.